What's up, you guys? Thank you again for joining Adrianne and Latrice in the kitchen. Today we'll be cooking up some collard greens. So I like to start with my ingredients. I like to use collard greens and kale greens. I love the texture of kale. It goes really well with your collards. And then of course you have to have your smoked turkey. Chicken broth is a really good thing to add for flavor. You have your vinegar. For seasoning, I like to use these little chicken seasoning drops. Then we have our minced garlic and a whole chopped onion. So it is this simple, you guys, for making some of the best collard greens. Okay, you guys, you can start by putting the chicken broth down in the pot. And then you can put your smoked turkey wings down in the pot with it. And you want to let that boil for maybe 30 to 45 minutes to give it a nice start before you add your collard greens. So I added that whole chopped onion along with 1 to 2 spoonfuls of the minced garlic. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is add 2 spoonfuls of vinegar. Vinegar really gives it a nice flavor. You don't want to add too much vinegar though, because it could make it a little too strong. So 2 spoonfuls will do the trick. Now I'm going to add these seasoned chicken drops. I'm going to actually add 1.5 of these. So I took 1 whole and broke off a half and placed it inside of it. Now I'm going to take some more chicken broth and pour it inside of the pot. So the first time when I boiled the smoked turkey, I used 1 whole box of the chicken broth. But now I'm just adding a little bit more chicken broth. You could do half of another box or a few cans or whatever you need to do. But you don't want your greens to get dry as you're cooking them. So the more chicken broth, the better. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the greens. Okay, after I add the collard greens, now I'm going to just stir that in a little bit. If you stir it in, you'll notice your chicken broth at the bottom of the pot. Chicken broth is actually better to use to cook your greens than water because it gives it a lot of great flavor. So many people use water for their greens, which is fine, but if you haven't tried it already, you should try that chicken broth. It's actually really, really good. Okay, so I stirred those greens in. As you can see, it went down pretty quickly. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add in the kale. Okay, I got my collard greens and my kale mixed in. Now you just want to give it another stir. Okay, try to get it down in that chicken broth as much as you can, just to wetten up your kale to shrink that size up. Just give it a nice stir. Now, I've added pretty much everything in my collard greens. What I'm going to do now is continue to stir until these kale and collard shrink down a little bit more. And then I'm just going to let it cook. I like to let it cook at least 2 hours before I come back and check it. After 2 hours, I just look at it, taste it. At that time, you'll be able to tell if your greens need a little bit more flavor. Which we'll talk about once we check our greens, okay? So I'm going to set my timer on the stove and come back and take a look at everything in 2 hours. Okay, you guys, so now I'm checking back in with the greens after 2 hours. During that 2 hours, I did occasionally stir, and I actually went ahead and added 1 extra cup of water, and I added that whole second box of chicken broth. Because I did notice that some of my chicken broth was sort of boiling out. And that's what you don't want to happen. So make sure you keep an eye out while those greens are cooking for those 2 first hours. And you could cook it on medium. So I added the extra liquid so it won't stick. And as you can see now, after 2 hours, everything looks nice and blended together. My kitchen smells great. Now, what we definitely want to do at this step is taste it. Okay, you want to taste it to see if you need to add any more seasoning or if you want a little bit more of that vinegar taste. You could do that. But I will recommend, if you will like to add more seasoning at this step, you could add salt and pepper instead of the seasoning drop. You don't want it to be over seasoned with the drop flavor, that chicken drop flavor. So I would recommend adding salt and pepper if you want more seasoning. The first time I tasted it, just to see how it tastes for flavor purposes, I added a little bit of salt and pepper. Once I stir it, notice that this smoked turkey, by the way, is nice and tender. It's literally falling off the bone. And you will notice a few bones inside of your smoked turkey, but that's okay. Or inside of your greens, but that's okay. You could just sort of pull those out later. Okay, so let's give it another good stir. Let's go ahead and taste that again. Yummy. Okay. And once I tasted it, I'll taste that again. I noticed that some of my kale and my collards are not exactly tender. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and let this cook at least another hour and then come back and check it. You'll know when it's done because your greens will have like a nice soft texture once you're chewing it. Right now mine is a little crispy, or it's not, you know, as soft as I would like for it to be. So I'm going to cook it, set my timer on an hour, and come back and taste it. I checked on it after an hour and I tasted my greens. It is nice and soft and ready to go. As you can see, that smoked turkey is falling off the bone. Everything looks pretty good. It's nice and ready. And again, even at this stage where it's done, you want to taste it, because it's never too late to add a little bit more salt, pepper, or vinegar if you feel that's a need. Alright, here's the finishing product. The greens are nice and tender. The color is amazing. It smells really good and tastes really good. I like to top it off with a classic old piece of cornbread. It is really delicious. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to press the like button and subscribe and ring that bell so you can continue to see easy meals coming your way. Thank you for cooking with Adrianne and Latrice. Alright, he confirmed that the meal is good to go.